It's funny how our phones have practically become our main bank these days.
Yeah.
I mean, when was the last time you actually went into a physical bank branch?
Right.
It's all about the apps now, isn't it?
It really is. And what's interesting is that it's not just a change in, like, our habits,
Mm-hmm.
It's a fundamental shift in how we actually see banking.
It's deeper than just saying, oh, I do my banking online now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, for a lot of people, their phone is their bank.
It's interesting you say that because the source we're looking at today, they make this comparison to Formula One racing.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Because it really highlights the importance of design.
Okay, so break that down for me.
Okay, so imagine like a regular car, right? Like a perfectly good car, maybe costs like $30,000, gets you from A to B, no problem.
Yeah.
Now picture a $15 million Formula One car.
Huge difference.
Both cars, they'll get you there, but it's the details. It's the performance, that meticulous engineering, those little things that make all the difference. And in the world of financial technology, those seemingly small design choices,
Yeah.
they carry that same weight. They can literally be worth millions.
That's a powerful way to think about it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we're not just talking about an app looking pretty here.
Right.
It's about the entire experience, the UX, as they call it,
Absolutely.
and making sure that people can trust it with, essentially their livelihood.
And that's what makes designing for finance so challenging.
Okay.
Because it's not like designing a game or a social media app.
Right.
The stakes are so much higher.
Yeah.
The source even mentioned that some of the most talented designers out there, like the best of the best, they shy away from fintech projects.
Really? Why is that? You'd think it would be the opposite, right? Like the hottest companies to work with?
You would, but it's because the pressure is immense. It's not just about making something look good. It's about understanding that a poorly designed banking app, it doesn't just lead to bad reviews.
Yeah.
It can cause huge financial losses,
Right.
security breaches, and like totally erode trust in an entire company, an entire institution.
You're talking about real-world consequences here.
Absolutely. And the source actually gives some pretty scary examples of what can happen when things go wrong.
Like what kind of examples are we talking about?
Well, there's a Citigroup case, for instance.
Okay.
A design flaw there contributed to a $500 million error.
500 million.
Yeah, and then there was that infamous, like, fat finger trade where someone misplaced a decimal point.
Oh.
And it led to 1.1 billion pounds in incorrect orders.
You've got to be kidding me.
No.
That's terrifying.
These weren't like glitches or anything, but design oversights
Right.
that had massive real-world consequences.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about people's money, their livelihoods, their security.
Exactly, and that's just, like, scratching the surface of what makes this field so demanding.
Okay, so what else makes fintech UX so uniquely challenging?
Well, you would think it was all about the code and security and things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But a big part of it, and the source highlights this really well, is actually about something much more fundamental. It's communication.
Okay.
And specifically, it's about bridging that gap between, like, design thinking and the language of finance, which could be
Oh, I see what you're saying.
pretty intense.
It's like two totally different worlds.
Totally.
So you're saying you could have a brilliant designer, but if they don't understand the ins and outs of financial products,
Exactly.
then it's not going to work.
It's like, imagine trying to design a user-friendly interface for something super complex, like, say, a collateralized debt obligation.
Right. And that's something that a lot of people, I mean, myself included, I'm not a financial expert.
Right.
So you need to make it make sense to someone like me.
Exactly. You need to take that information and present it in a way that's not just visually appealing, but also something that someone who doesn't eat and sleep financial jargon can actually understand.
Yeah. It's like, how do you explain quantum physics to a 5-year-old, right?
Exactly.
Like, you need to find that common ground.
You need to simplify without losing the essence of what makes that thing important.
Yeah. Right. And it's not just about the terms themselves, right?
No, not at all.
It's also about understanding the regulations, the legal stuff.
Oh, absolutely, because those regulations, they vary so much from country to country.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they can have a huge impact on how a product actually functions.
Right. So you could design something amazing, but if it doesn't comply with the rules and regulations, it's back to the drawing board.
Exactly.
So we've got the design aspect, the financial literacy, and then this whole other layer of regulatory knowledge.
It's a lot to juggle.
It really is. And on top of that, the source mentions something called digital specifics,
Right.
which adds another layer of complexity.
It does, because you're not just designing for any digital platform. You're designing for a very specific context, especially with finance.
Okay.
So you've got to think about the limitations of a mobile screen, for example.
Yeah.
The importance of security protocols.
Right, like two-factor authentication and all that.
Exactly. And even like the psychology of how people interact with financial information on their phones.
Oh, that's a good point, because it's one thing to design an interface that looks nice, but you also have to consider how people behave when they're dealing with their money, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to our finances, people don't always act rationally.
That's true. We let our emotions get in the way.
All the time.
Fear, excitement, you name it.
And a good fintech UX designer, they understand that.
So it's almost like you're designing for human behavior as much as you are for the technology itself.
Exactly. You're trying to build trust.
Right.
You're trying to alleviate anxiety.
And you're doing all of this within this incredibly complex, highly regulated world of finance.
It's a real balancing act.
No wonder some of the best designers are intimidated by it.
I can imagine.
But what about the companies that aren't intimidated? The ones that think they can just jump in and figure it out as they go?
Well, the source talks about this. It's the, what do they call it? The we can handle anything trap.
Right, the we can handle anything trap.
And it's a common one.
It's a classic case of biting off more than you can chew, right?
Totally. And it usually comes down to a lack of awareness, you know?
Like, they don't even know what they don't know.
Yeah, they see these successful fintech apps out there and they're like, well, how hard could it be?
Right.
But they don't see the years of experience, these specialized knowledge
And blood, sweat, and tears.
that goes into building a truly great fintech product.
The source actually uses this analogy of a heart surgeon.
Oh, yeah, I like that one.
They say you wouldn't go to a general practitioner for open heart surgery.
Right. You want the specialist.
Exactly. You want someone who lives and breathes hearts, who's seen it all.
Someone who knows the ins and outs of that specific organ.
And it's the same with fintech UX. You need that specialized knowledge.
100%.
So how can our listeners, how can they spot the difference between a firm that truly specializes in this and one that's just,
Just dabbling.
yeah, just dabbling?
Well, the source outlines 5 key areas where these specialist firms really excel.
Okay, let's hear it.
Number 1 is domain expertise.
Okay.
And this goes beyond just design principles, right? It's about understanding the financial products themselves, the regulations,
Right.
the user's needs, their anxieties, all of it.
So they're not just designing an interface, they're designing for a specific user.
With very specific needs.
With very real fears and anxieties about their money.
Exactly.
Okay, what's number 2?
Number 2 is managing design complexity.
Which we know is a huge part of this.
Huge. And these specialized firms, they've developed strategies,
Right.
processes specifically designed to navigate that complexity.
So they're not reinventing the wheel every time.
Exactly. They've got systems in place.
Okay, that makes sense. What's next?
Number 3, and this is a big one, their user-centered design approach.
Okay.
So it's not just about building an app, it's about crafting an experience.
Right.
One that puts the user front and center.
Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
It is. It's about making the user feel in control.
Informed, secure.
Exactly.
That's how you build trust.
And that leads us to number 4, which is all about efficiency and project management.
Okay.
Because these firms are so specialized, they can move quickly.
Right.
They avoid those costly delays, those misunderstandings that you might get with a more generalist firm.
Time is money, as they say.
And the source actually tells this great story about a bank that was blown away.
Oh, tell me more.
Because this specialized fintech UX agency, they were able to decipher the bank's system in like a month.
Wow.
Whereas the generalist agency had taken 4 months and still didn't fully get it.
So it's not just about getting it done, it's about understanding the nuances
Precisely.
from the get-go.
And that brings us to the 5th and final area where these specialist firms really stand out.
Okay, drum roll, please.
It's their ability to balance innovation with security.
Okay, so they're not afraid to push the boundaries.
Not at all. They're exploring new technologies,
Approaches.
but they're doing it with a deep understanding of the risks.
So they're not sacrificing security for the sake of being flashy or innovative.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot.
Where you're pushing the envelope, but also making sure that everything is locked down tight.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
We've really gotten into the weeds of what makes fintech UX such a unique and challenging field.
It really is a hidden world.
Full of complexities, high stakes, but also incredible opportunities for those who really know their stuff.
And for our listeners out there, the next time you open up your banking app,
Take a minute to appreciate the design, the thought, the expertise,
Because there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than you might think.
It's not just ones and zeros. It's about people's lives, their financial well-being, their trust.
All in the palm of your hand.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It really is.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening.